Hello and welcome to another week of chess openings with me, Zach Slagaski, as I go through all the basic openings for you to improve your chess elo in your chess journey. This week, we're going over the Scotch Game, a very theory-driven, but also very safe opening that you can use as white and helps you take control of the center and throw black a little off balance starting out. So in this video, we're gonna go over three separate openings. The first one being this classical Scotch Game, the second being the Mieses Scotch Game, and the third one being the Steinitz Scotch Game. We're going over just these three today because these are the three main variations that you are going to see when you play the Scotch Game. And we're not going to go very deep into these openings because the Scotch Game is a very fundamentally sound opening that a lot of chess players can just play sound moves and you're going to get ahead just fine. So without further ado, let's begin with the classical opening and how you start off the Scotch Game from each game starting out. So to start off with the Scotch Game, you start with an E4 pawn opening. Black has to meet with the E5 pawn opening, and you start with knight to F3, which looks very similar to how an Italian game is going to start out. Black then does the very standard knight to C6, defending its pawn from our knight attack. And what we do that separates the Scotch Game is we bring this pawn up here to D4, attacking this pawn, and it's covered by this queen. So we're taking a very early control of the center of the board. Black has a rough time figuring out how to fight this. And 95% of the time, pawn is just going to take that pawn there on E4. We then take, and this is where the different branches branch off from here. This is like always the bread and butter go-to opening. So in the standard classical variation that we're first going to be going over, black will usually bring down this bishop to attack there. So we have two attackers going after this knight here on D4. Naturally, the natural developing move for white is to bring the bishop from C1 up to E3 and defend it. Black will sometimes spit this king out, trying to attack this pawn here, but also to attack this knight here to bring another attacker, and we just bring another defender in, moving up to C3. Black then moves its knight over there to G7. From here, it is a very standard opening. Like white can move out the bishop over here to F4. Black brings out this knight attack on E4 to attack this bishop here. White can bring it back, and like a lot of these moves here, especially in the classical variation, from this knight move back here, this is kind of where everything deviates in the classical variation for the Scotch Game. So the big thing is that we started to notice right here in the middle of the board is these like pieces, they're all standard moves. There's not anything that's like a real trick with this opening. If you play fundamentally sound chess, you're going to be in a good position. I mean, as of right now, you're up half a point as white just because you took control of the center of the board by trading that pawn. So that's the very simple explanation of the classical variation. The next one is my favorite of the three, and it's the Mieses Variation. So you start off the same, E4, E5, knight to F3, knight to C6, and pushing up to D4, you do the exchange. But instead of bringing the bishop out here to C5 like in the classical variation, we're kicking the knight out here to F6, bringing an extra attacker and creating exciting opportunities for black. This pawn's undefended, and he's hoping he can take it because this knight is defended by these two pawns here. So the best move that you can do for white is to take that and disrupt his pawn structure. Now, black doesn't want to take here because if he does that, we take here. King has to take back, and you're left with the king stuck in the center of the board. So what will always happen at this point is bishop will take there, and we push up the pawn here. Now, there's one of two ways that you can go about this. The knight will usually drop down here, or the queen will come here to E2. By the queen coming here, this pawn can attack this knight because it's pinned to the king. So what as you want to do with white is bring this queen up here to break that pin and allow that pawn to attack if it needs to be and trade the queens. Black then usually will kick the knight out here to D5, and you just keep attacking it with C4. Now this is a very rare move for black, but they will sometimes bring out this bishop here, attacking this pawn and pinning it to the queen. And you just need to unpin it by bringing out this pawn here and developing this just in case there is an attack. We're able to stop it right away. And just after this variation, it's even. And so this is like a high level variation of the game that you get from a lot of grandmaster games, which is why it's even. You will never see this bishop really come out here on the beginning stages. What is most likely going to happen is from here, they take, you push up, the knight comes out here, you push up again, and usually they'll either kick the knight out here or they'll kick the knight up here to b6. But you're putting this attack on, and if they come back here, you just keep developing your pieces. Like, that's the great thing about the Scotch game, is it kind of fundamentally rewards like good development. So that is the Mieses Variation in a nutshell. Again, these games can go in so many different ways, especially on the lower levels. Like, it's hard to do a video on fundamentally sound chess after the opening, but these are the first two variations. Our last variation is going to be the Steinitz Variation, and it is a very aggressive opening for black. So we'll meet in the center with our e4 and e5 pawns. The knights come out to defend and attack, and we bring out that d4 pawn to attack that pawn. We do the exchange, but instead of the knight taking or the bishop coming out or the knight coming out here, we see the queen coming out here looking to attack this pawn here at e4. It is undefended, and so what does white do to refute this attack from black? Well, the first thing you want to do is develop the knight to b3 or c3. Black will pin that knight with its bishop here to b4, and we'll want to bring out this bishop here to e2. Now you're saying, why would we want to do that? The queen's just going to get the pawn. There's two different ways that you can go about attacking this. So the first being, queen takes this pawn. We will want to shoot this knight over here to threaten this fork up here, because that queen cannot defend that attack. Sometimes they will attack with the bishop to try to disrupt this pawn structure here and move the king over here to prevent the fork from happening. We just castle, and from here, white has a nice slight disadvantage of like 1.5 pieces. So it's very good for white if black does this h4 queen attack. The other variation that we could see coming from this refutation of the h4 attack is if black brings another attacker here to attack the pawn. One thing that white can do is now whip over the knight over here to f5 to attack the queen, and also present a checking opportunity and attacking the king there. So after black takes the pawn, white then goes, attacks the king. The king can go after the knight, thinking that he's going to have a pretty easy way to take this knight away because it's not going to be able to run here and here. But white is able to defend that knight by bringing the bishop up to h6 here. The queen takes the free pawn, hoping to get this here, but white has a nice refutation by bringing the knight out here, attacking this knight here, and placing this king in check, causing it to run away a little bit. We then bring up the bishop to attack the queen, protect the rook, since this queen is protecting this bishop here. The queen then goes to attack both the bishop and the knight, and it's easy refutation from white. They just put the king in check. King continues the run, and you bring the bishop up here to attack both the rook and the knight while also being defended by the knight here. Black brings over this rook here to pin this queen to the king, and it looks very scary from here, but it's really easy to refute for white. They just take the knight here, putting the king in check, and obviously black isn't going to want to do that by placing the knight or the rook in between the king. So what they'll do is they'll bring the bishop back to attack the bishop, and instead of just trading the bishops off, the power move is to actually go to rook knight to g7 here to attack the rook, or if there's a trade, if black trades, that's checkmate. Very easy checkmate. But what is most likely going to happen is black's now in a very awkward situation where it can't attack this bishop, the queen can't attack this knight, and you're able to really just attack black as you wish by either castling long or finding another way to attack black's structure. So that is the basic rundown of the Scotch game. If you like that video, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I also stream on Twitch every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from about 7 p.m. to midnight, playing these openings where I try to do a variation every night and try to really like implant in my brain how to best play these. So if you guys would like to learn these openings yourself and help me learn them for these videos for you, stop by at my Twitch. The link is in the description below. Next week, we're going to be going over the Danish Gambit, revisiting an old opening, but with a new fun twist. So we hope to see you there, and yeah. Opening galore, yeah, fun stuff, yeah.